Hi everybody, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I appreciate what busy schedules you all have, so we're really glad to have you here with us for the first of our languages teach meets. So in conjunction with Matt, Dan and the CPD team, we obviously wanted as a languages team to get a chance to come out and speak to you all as well. And really this is going to be the first of a series of these. So from the autumn term we plan on having a languages teach meet every month, which will be on much more specific topics. For example, we'll be looking at things like deep dives, supporting children with educational needs in modern languages, looking at starters and plenaries, activities and games, all sorts of different aspects, including different teaching methodologies, ways to encourage speaking and grammar and those sorts of things. So from the autumn term, do keep a lookout for those, because we plan on obviously having quite a comprehensive set of these sessions to really help you develop with some free CPD to carry on. So tonight we're starting by looking at how to develop confidence in teaching primary languages. So this is an area that we're quite passionate about at Twinkl, because we're aware of how many of you are not actually language experts. If you've come from a secondary language background, then you'll have studied languages at university and done a languages PGCE, and lots of things are very straightforward. But if you haven't, and from conversations with many teachers who are teaching at primary school, it's so common that people have suddenly had a language leadership role expected of them, and they don't have any experience themselves, or they might be a classroom teacher and they're just having to teach their class. And it's obviously really daunting if you don't have a languages background to actually begin teaching languages. So I just wanted to talk a little bit tonight about how we can support you through that, to give you some tips to just boost confidence. And it may well be that this isn't for you, it could be for members of your department. So it may well be that you have expertise in languages, but you have teachers working for you who don't, and you might just want some ideas with them to help them boost their confidence in the early days. So that's really what it is kind of, I want to look a little bit more at the national curriculum and what that means as a teacher in terms of how much language do you actually have to teach, how much of an expert should you expect to be. And then we want to obviously look at some top tips for how we can help you, and then specifically how at Twinkl how we can help you and what we do to support non-subject specialist teachers, and then some look at some things that we've got coming soon in terms of our resources. So firstly, just to introduce myself and our team. So I'm Beth, and I'm the languages product owner, and I've got a long background in language education. I've taught from Key Stage 2 right up to Key Stage 5, French and Spanish. I've always worked in language education, and I'm particularly passionate about the transition from primary to secondary and how we support teachers and pupils with that. And I'm well aware that I've come from a language background myself, with language A levels and a degree in languages, and always focusing on languages. So I'm coming at it from that, but I know from going in to teaching primary schools, and particularly working with transition year groups, how teachers who don't have any language expertise, how they feel. And within our team, we've got a massive range of expertise. So some of those colleagues are here with me tonight. You may see them around. We've got Delphine, who is a French native speaker, Hayley, who's an experienced French leader from primary school, and Pete, who's had all sorts of international teaching experience. So, that's just a kind of a snippet of the team. But within our team, we have a range of native speakers, experts from early years to Key Stage 1 all the way up to A level. So we really do cover a wide range of language skills, so to try to give you the broader picture really. And the most important thing is that we all absolutely love languages. We're really passionate about it, and we also really love the culture, because it isn't just about the language, it's also about the countries where those languages are spoken. So that's something that we feel really strongly about sharing. And the mission at Twinkl is always to help those who teach, and within our team it's to help those who teach languages, and specifically to help those of you teaching primary school languages. Now, I know if you're not an expert, wading into the hashtag MFL Twitterati or any of the kind of social media sort of the people who are quite prolific on social media can be quite scary, because everything's filled with different methodologies, different ideas. You've got lots of people with all sorts of qualifications, and that can be quite scary when you're thinking, I just don't know how to teach pets to my class, or I don't know where to start with this. So, I want to kind of talk about how we're reassuring from the ground up, and also to give a little bit of background into the languages curriculum so that you can feel a little bit more confident with it. Because yes, there's a document and that's available to everyone, but equally it's sometimes how you interpret that. And if you're interpreting that in isolation, it can be quite daunting to kind of be sure what to do with it. So I want to start by really looking at the background behind primary languages. We want to look at some practical strategies that you can just employ immediately just to act more confident and boost your confidence in the classroom. And then just look about how we can help you at Twinkl. And we will then come on to questions at the end. And obviously anything that we're not able to answer at this stage will be rolled forward into our CPD programme for the autumn term, which is the plan really. So anything, if we have several questions on certain areas, that will be informing where we're going. And certainly if you can fill in the CPD form, that's really helpful to us, because it lets us know exactly what you need. Because I always feel that it's important that we tailor what we make to what you want, really, which is the most important thing. So a little bit of background, really. So languages, as we know, are compulsory at Key Stage 2. They're not compulsory at Key Stage 1, but it is becoming more common. And you might actually be finding yourself, if not under pressure, that there is some suggestion in your school that you do start introducing it at EYFS or Key Stage 1. It can be quite tricky, because if you're not an expert, to sort of dial it back even further, it can be quite scary. So this is something that we're going to look at in the autumn term as well. So how you can introduce it into Key Stage 1 and how you can kind of start embedding it from a much younger age, because it does help with confidence and pronunciation and those sorts of things. And the biggest thing is that it can be any language. The reality is that over 70% of primary schools in England teach French. And the simple reason for that is because most teachers tend to have a GCSE in French themselves, and it tends to be the most common language that's taught. Around 23-24% of people will teach primary Spanish, and the remainder, there's a few percent for German, and then split between other languages. Now, as I said, it can be any modern or ancient language. So people will teach Latin. There is sometimes ancient Greek. There might be Esperanto, Mandarin. That you do see a range. You might even see BSL. So it does happen that different languages are taught, but by and large, French seems to be the most common as the pattern, because that seems to be what people are most familiar with themselves. The biggest focus into the national curriculum is practical communication. So we're trying to give the students a really good foundation where they're actually using language that they will need and that they can actually put into practice, rather than it being completely abstract. We want them to understand and respond to spoken and written language, but also get a good balance between speaking and writing, so it isn't focused just on one of those things. And something that you may, if you've kind of forayed into more of the kind of Ofsted documentation about the 3 pillars, which are vocabulary, phonics and grammar. And that's something obviously we'll be looking at in the autumn term in more detail, because those are the 3 things, the 3 strands that make up the expectations now for language teaching. That we need the vocabulary, which are your basic words that you can't get anywhere without, the phonics, so how to sound out those words, and then the grammar, so actually how to put those words into sentences. So those are your building blocks, the foundations of your language learning. So everything that we do is split into those 3 really. And it's also a really good starting point, because if you're quite nervous about teaching languages, starting with just phonics or just vocabulary or just grammar can be a way around it, rather than launching straight in. We want children to think about ideas, facts and feelings, that they can give opinions, that it should be relatively familiar kind of concepts. So they would be learning about pets, about family, about counting and saying their age. So we're not expecting, overly complex vocabulary structures here or kind of concepts, but general things that they're familiar with. And fundamentally, we're looking at a foundation for Key Stage 3. But the important thing is that it's not a foundation in terms of they must have learnt this list of words, they must have learnt exactly this grammar point, they must have learnt this. It's actually, you're giving them a building block to start learning at Key Stage 3. Because it might well be that you do French at your school, but they learn Spanish at primary school, or the other way around, or anything at all. It's supposed to be that you're giving them a foundation in language learning ready for Key Stage 3. So, you know, if you're lucky enough to have a great relationship with your partner school that you're a feeder school for, then that can obviously be really helpful, and they can work with you and you can work towards a standard that they're requiring. But many teachers don't have that, and it's just a case of deciding where you want to go with it yourselves. Now, the link for the National Curriculum Programme of Study, which hopefully you're all familiar with, is in the chat. And this is a document that, you know, you should all have printed out. And I'm not going to read through this, other than just to kind of point out, at no point in this programme of study is it specifying a specific topic. Is it saying you must learn this, you must be able to say that? It's extremely general. And that works two ways. People are either delighted by that because it gives them a broad scope, and if you're really confident with the subject, you're absolutely fine to kind of go broad with it. But if you're not, you're thinking, well, where on earth do I begin? You know, what do I do? How do I actually make my way through this? So that's what we want to look at, really, is just to unpick the key areas of this so you understand what it is that you want your children to do and what they need to do at the end of it. So, you know, the fundamentals that you can see here are the expectations from any language. So being able to speak, to pronounce things accurately, to use sentences, to look at patterns that they can see. But actually, things like patterns and some of those words that are leaping out at you there, that's brilliant, because if you're a non-specialist, looking for patterns is something that you can do together. These don't always have to be things that you're expected to be an expert in. It carries on with songs, stories, poems, and rhymes. Now, you know, it doesn't have to be overly complicated. It could be a familiar Mr. Men book that's in French or Spanish that you're looking at. It could be just looking at something online or a blurb of a book, you know, anything that you could look at in that aspect, really. We're not expecting them to be reading novels or to have the same reading age in French that they would have in English, but it is just to try to familiarize themselves with the culture, really. And we're looking at broadening their vocabulary. We want them to understand basic grammar and generally be able to make some descriptions. So, you know, it's very, very general. So it isn't giving you a finished point of where you need to end up. But what it is telling you is that you should provide an appropriate balance of spoken and written language. So it shouldn't just be a case of worksheets and copying things down. It should also be, you know, chance to speak, so practical communication, but it's laying foundations. So if you're looking at the three pillars of phonics, vocabulary, and grammar, that they have language learning strategies ready to go ahead to Key Stage 3 to learn languages. So there are no prescribed topics or themes, and you shouldn't be panicking that you're thinking, oh my goodness, this school, I know that they've taught school subjects, but I've taught pets. That's absolutely fine. The context that you choose to teach it within, that's your prerogative to decide your contexts. You don't have to fit any prescribed topics. Obviously, most people tend to start with greetings and personal information because that's a common place to start language, but you can start anywhere at all. It doesn't specify a level that they need to reach, but what the expectation is that you have enabled progress. So when you're looking at compiling your evidence as a teacher, it's actually showing that you have given your children the opportunity to make progress. And if you're a learner yourself, that's giving yourself the opportunity to make progress alongside with them. So, you know, even as a non-learner, that's something you know, a non-specialist, you can feel confident with that as an experienced classroom practitioner, that's what you do. You enable learning, you enable progress. You know, you want to give them an opening to other cultures, curiosity and understanding of the world. So you want them to understand more about other cultures. So it's less about you feeling you have to take them to an end point and more about you feeling that you're starting a language journey for them that they continue at Key Stage 3, which is kind of to give you confidence, really, that there isn't that pressure on you to think, oh my goodness, by the end of this, they need to be able to say this, they need to be able to recite this, they need to be able to learn 50 words. Well, no, there isn't an expectation of anything specific. If that helps you to meet those targets, that you have those things that you set out yourself, by all means, you can do it. But it's more a case that you are enabling their progress and giving them the chance to get to that point. So as I've said, it's not expecting you to be an expert The key verbs that I really like from the programs of study are enable. So enable learning, foster curiosity, and deepen understanding of the world. And that's something that I feel really passionate about within the languages team. Is languages are a gateway to learning more about the world. It's not just about learning the language itself. If you learn a little bit of a language, it suddenly makes you realize there's more about culture to learn. You can learn about the country, and it's just giving the children that opening to another world, a freedom from that sort of insularity, the liberation to actually step beyond where they live themselves and to learn a little bit. And it's perfect then, because chances are there are lots of different languages spoken in your school as well, in which case it's a chance to really celebrate those as well. The key verbs from the programs of study: appreciate, adapt, develop, engage. There's nothing frightening about those as a non-specialist. You can all feel confident as primary school practitioners that you can behave in a way that enables your student to meet those kind of targets. And to start with, it's important to focus on the positive aspects that are easy to approach. So culture, similarities and differences with English, for example, patterns, learning more about the country, learning about traditions, all of those sorts of things, festivals, those don't require you to be a subject expert. Those just require you to have an appreciation of the world in exactly the same as you would for any other subject. So it's just trying to say, when you look at that document first off, and if you're trying to put a scheme of work together or you're trying to do something from scratch, not to be terrified by it, because there is so much that's really positive about that scheme of work that enables you an awful lot of freedom, actually. And I know timetables are restricted. You may only have 30 or 40 minutes a week. It may be every other week, or it may be that you have a block of time. But actually, if you look at that, there's a lot of flexibility in that National Curriculum Programme of Study to enable you to help your children meet those targets by the time they leave you at the end of year 6. So what I want to really look at with you now are just some top takeaways, really, for you to take and sort of think about your own practice and how to feel more confident straight away. And I would say the first thing is not to be afraid to have a go. It can be really daunting if you haven't spoken any French since school yourself, since your GCSEs, and you're suddenly having to stand up and speak in front of your class. It is not the same as having to teach geography and not being a geography expert, or history and not having a history background. It's suddenly putting yourself out there. But actually, it's okay to be a learner too, because we all, as teachers, respect people who are learners. Now, I might have a degree in languages, but by no means do I know everything that there is. I learn things constantly. So Delphine, one of my colleagues on the team who is a native speaker, I will often go to her with questions, and I'm often learning new things. And languages evolve. The same as in English, that we have new words that appear constantly. French, Spanish, German, they're all evolving. So there isn't a finite set of knowledge that any of us can have. If you pick up the Times, would you understand every single English word in an article that's there? Chances are you probably wouldn't. So why would you put that pressure on yourself to know the same in a foreign language? You absolutely mustn't. I'm always telling children, if they're doing reading comprehensions, you don't have to understand every word. You need to understand the gist. So you need to kind of lose that fear factor and not be afraid to join in. So being a learner yourself, it gives you the great perspective that you can see where children are struggling. You can understand what's tricky for them. You can help them by digging in and helping them to understand instructions, the rubrics, learning some key things of those to help explain the activities. You can offer support by helping them identify familiar words, cognates, so words that are similar to English that look the same, words that are loan words, in other words, French words that we use in English, so that they would recognize, like the word for restaurant, for example, would be the same, and children would recognize this. Or for looking for similarities and differences. You don't have to wade straight in by things that are making you nervous. You can just start by looking at these sorts of things, by looking for things that are common, looking for things that are different, and just unpicking some things that you can see. Just looking at the names for towns. What can you see? Look, these words have got accents on them. In Spanish, exclamations have got an upside down exclamation mark or an upside down question mark. Why do you think that is? Just learning a little bit more about language conventions before you dive straight in, thinking that lesson 1 in September, you've got to get straight in there speaking in Spanish or French. You really don't. There's lots to do before you go. And if you're looking for a good way to start because you're not sure, we have things like Matt's shared the link for you of our Learn French worksheet starter pack, which we've got these for Spanish and German as well. And it's a series of worksheets with phonetic pronunciation. And if you're feeling quite lost and not sure where to start, that's a great way to begin. Using the target language is an absolute essential, really. It can be really tempting if you're nervous to conduct the entire lessons in English. And I know from a classroom management point of view, sometimes it can be a lot easier. If you're asking children to be quiet or to listen, to do that in English is obviously going to be easier. But the more you use key classroom language in the language you're studying, the more helpful it's going to be for children. So, don't shy away from using it in your practice. So the more you use it, the more comfortable you'll become. So greet the class in French or Spanish at the start of the lesson. Say please and thank you always in French or Spanish. Well done, great work. Encourage them to use incidental language as well. So answering the register by saying yes in French or Spanish. Asking to go to the toilet, for example. A great tip is to learn some key instructions for things like look, listen, sit down, stand up, that you can use every single lesson. If you can't remember them, print them out on flashcards, hold them up as you say them to the children, so the children get used to them and they learn them with them too. They can repeat them with you as well, so that they learn how they sound and they can work on their phonic pronunciation at the same time. So keep a list with you to help you in every single lesson. When I used to go in to teach primary French to a year 6 class, they would already have been having a lesson before, and I would always make a point of, even though they weren't moving classrooms, of making them all stand up. And I would greet the class with bonjour la classe, and they'd have to say bonjour madame, and then I'd tell them to sit down in French. And at the end of the lesson, we'd always say goodbye at the end as well. So that sort of indicated that the lesson began. So make that transition in French or Spanish or whichever language you're using, so that the children know, okay, this is, a language lesson now. I've got to try and learn the language, really. And, simple things like, yes, you probably won't need to take the register again because you've taken it several times, but call it again in French because it's a French lesson, and the children then have to answer in French. Look at ways of working that in so it's there. If you're nervous about your pronunciation, we've just uploaded today a topic vocabulary guidance pack. This actually came from a discussion with a language leader who wasn't a subject expert herself, and she said, you know what I really need? It's a topic list. I need something on every topic. So we've put this together, and it's also got sound files so that you can practice your pronunciation on all of the keywords and phrases that you've got. The link is in the chat for you there, and it'll also be sent out after this webinar. So that's a really, really great resource to help you just skill up and practice some keywords and phrases. The next thing, similar to not being afraid to join in, to not having a go, is to join in. So it is really motivating for children to see you speaking the language. So if you're using, for example, some of our language resources that have got sound files, it's very easy to press play on the sound file and make the children repeat and not repeat it yourself. But I would say the most important thing is to practice it too. So if you have chance to watch it first, to actually practice it yourself, but then to join in with the children. If you're doing choral repetition, join in with them. If they're doing a speaking activity, join in as well. If it's a board game, play the game, take part and actually speak with them. The more often you use it yourself, the more often you're going to get them, the more you'll get confident as well. If you have TAs in the classroom as well, encourage them to join in as well, so that, give them what the activities are going to be and ask them to participate as well, so that they are also joining in and doing it. It's really common for children to find it quite embarrassing, particularly the older they get, to speak in a foreign language. So seeing you having a go and not being afraid to get it wrong is really important, because it means they can try things out themselves. Silly voices can really help as well. So, acting in a role play voice, do this in a style. Can you do this in a robot voice? Can you do this in a sad voice? Can you do this like a ghost? That's a kind of way to overcome it as well. Let's whisper this. If you're repeating things, repeat it several times in different voices. And if you're nervous yourself about pronunciation, we've got a whole new range of French phonics resources, which are all about practicing the sounds. And we've got some taster packs there shared for you. And we also have a free CPD video on the importance of phonics in the languages curriculum. But you can deliver these sessions as standalone sessions on all the sounds. So before you even start teaching any language, you could just be learning the sounds. So you don't even have to go down that point that you're worrying too much about the grammatical formations or any of those sorts of things. It's, you know, a great way to get in there as well if you're not entirely sure where to begin. But it's a good way yourself to actually make a start as well if you're not entirely sure how to go about it. As I keep saying, not to worry about mistakes. Something I say in our CPD videos, which we're starting to upload, is that just like English, all languages have irregularities in spelling, grammar and pronunciation, and even experienced subject specialists don't always get things right. Native speakers don't always get things right either. How many times have you had to correct somebody's English? It happens to everybody. So don't be afraid to make mistakes and don't expect to be perfect. I had a really interesting conversation with a subject teacher who, again, was a non-specialist, and she said, it's just really hard because I'm really worried about getting things like masculine and feminine wrong. And I was trying to say, well, actually, that's fine, because people with a French degree will still get masculine and feminine wrong, or a Spanish degree. People look it up. That's what dictionaries are for. Don't be afraid to make that mistake or to say, do you know what? I don't know. I always have been at pains to point out to my classes from any age group that I'm not, you know, I'm not a walking dictionary. I don't know every single word. I don't know every single answer. But if I don't know, I know how to look it up. I know how to find it out. And those are the skills that you want to teach your languages, because you want to teach your children so they have the skills to do that themselves. And it's really essential as well that communication is more important than accuracy. You know, it says the national curriculum has got to focus on practical communication. So it's really important that you're a role model for your children, that they can see you communicating and not being afraid to make mistakes. Let them correct you, ask them to correct you, deliberately make mistakes if you need to. Let them go through that process. So modeling mistakes and overcoming them will show them how to become resilient learners and not be afraid that they can bounce back if there's a setback. They aren't worried about, you know, going again and trying it, because it's absolutely fine. There's nothing in the national curriculum that says they have to be flawless, fluent speakers at the end of year 7. We want confident communicators. That's what we want our year 6s to be. We want them to be starting into year 7 feeling that they're confident about language learning, that they can start that journey and it doesn't terrify them. And if they see you being frightened, or you being nervous, or you saying languages are tough, they're going to start feeling the same way themselves. So we want to really encourage that enthusiasm and that enjoyment of the subject, and just generally not that fear at all. So they're just not frightened. Another tip that I think is really important is making it visual. So if you're introducing words, make sure you've got pictures, photos, or flashcards, or even the items themselves. If it's, say, pencil case items, for example. If it's clothes, have a bag of clothes. You know, I've often done this. You know, if it's food, you know, you can have food items for your pupils to actually match up or to actually see. You know, make sure you've got displays of new topics or key vocabulary. Print out word mats or bookmarks for them, or knowledge organisers, and stick them to the desks. Use any opportunity you can to embed the language as part of your routine. So, you know, if you've got numbers around the classroom, have the numbers in French as well. Have hello, goodbye. You could even have language around the school. You know, it's anything that you could do to increase and promote the use of the language is going to be beneficial to the children in the classroom. You know, model vocabulary as much as possible. So use different voices, actions, gestures. Ask children to repeat it to ensure they're practicing their pronunciation. Props and actions will always help them to retain new vocabulary. They remember things. Children always like puppets, for example. So having a little French character can be really good, or a Spanish character, and to give it a name can be fantastic. You know, if you're teaching them the word happy, always model it with a big smile. You know, look fed up and sad for the word unhappy. Act them out, you know. Turn things into a game. So if you say a word, they've got to act it out, so that, you know, you could have actions for hello, goodbye, stand up, sit down, you know, listen, look, so that they're using those with you. Actions, you know, physical and visual reinforcement of the language will always help your children to learn more. You know, displays are hugely important. I know that if you're not teaching your own class and you're teaching several classes, you may be going through different classrooms. Therefore, you might not have a notice board. It's time to beg, steal or borrow a bit of space on the wall to include some language display that's there, or at the very least in the corridor, so that you can have a language learning wall, so that you can really start to promote it. You know, ask the head teacher, can you have, you know, head teacher in French on the door? Can you have, you know, the word for the office? You know, we have, you know, all sorts of different resources that can help with that. And if there's anything you feel you need, you can request that through Twinkl Cares and we can make them for you. So recently we had a request for Spanish cards to go around the class, to go around the school, so that people could label the different classrooms, the rooms, the hall, the corridor, the library, all those sorts of things, and we made those. So, you know, those are great ideas. Some bookmarks are lovely ideas, so that children use those and that they're seeing language, and just to keep it in their minds, so they're seeing it and it just becomes part of what they're doing. That's really important. So I've mentioned already about knowledge organisers briefly and word mats and things, but I'm sort of coming back to it here now, because looking things up is probably the single most important thing. Now, if you walk into any secondary school, you would be hard pushed to find a languages classroom that doesn't have a great big dictionary sat on the desk. Looking up a word or not knowing the answer is 100% not a sign of weakness. It does not mean that you do not know what it is, because being a linguist, being a language learner is about having the skills, and dictionary skills are really important within this. So being able to look up a word, or being able to have some kind of strategy of what you do if you don't know how to do it, is the most important thing. So, you know, the best route, if a child asks you what a word means and you don't know, or they ask you something and you don't know what it is, look it up alongside them. It is absolutely the best thing to do, to not be afraid of doing that. So, you know, dictionary within easy reach is great, but online dictionaries are fantastic and so quick. So you can have an online dictionary bookmarked as one of your favorites on your computer, and you can just call it up on the whiteboard, and quickly look up a word. There are loads out there. Some are better than others, but find one that works quickly for you and seems quite suitable. And that's a great way for just looking up individual words. If you can, print out knowledge organisers or vocabulary lists and keep them with you. So if you're teaching a topic, have that knowledge organiser with you, and encourage children, if they've got them on their desks, if they're looking for a word, that they look it up. This is, I would say this as someone who has spent a huge amount of time in a secondary school classroom, the best skill you can possibly give your primary children is the coping skills to deal with unfamiliar language. Just teaching them reams and reams of vocabulary doesn't equip them with any skills, but teaching them how to look up a word is the most important thing. So how they cope. So looking at, for example, different ways. If they find a word, well, let's have a look at it. Does it look like another word that we've seen? Is it part of a word family? Can we recognize it? Have we seen another word that looks a bit like it? Do we think it's a verb? Do we think it's a noun? What do we think it is, for example? And looking it up. You know, if children see you using reference tools and going through these processes every single time, it will encourage them to use that too. And that's you evidencing how you are enabling them to make progress in a language in the national curriculum. And I think that's the most important thing. In fact, you know, developing independence in learners is the most important thing, you know, particularly for learning languages. We want to develop resilient learners who are not fazed by setbacks, who are not panicked if they see a word they don't know, and they know how to cope with it. And this brings me on to my next point, really, which is skills, not drills. And that's because we could drill children with vocabulary or rote learning within an inch of their lives, but actually at the end of it, all they know is a list of words. Really what we want our children to do is to be able to use those words and do something with them. And in order to do that, they need skills. And there are all sorts of different skills that you can teach, which again, shouldn't be something that causes you any kind of fear as a non-specialist. So how to learn a word, So there are all sorts of different skills and different ways that how you learn new items of vocabulary. So learning words with them, looking at strategies for how you learn words. That's a really key thing to learn, because if you know, it is almost impossible to get to a point at the end of year 6 that every single primary school, unless you have someone who comes out and delivers this as an outreach, that every single primary school has prepared every single child with exactly the same items of vocabulary. It very rarely happens. So you get to year 7 and it's almost a bit of a blank slate. But what stands out are the children, not who know the words, but who know what to do with them, or if they're given new words, how to find more of them or how to use them, so or how to learn them. So teaching your children how to learn words is more important than just actually those words themselves. Teaching them how to look up a word in a dictionary or how to use reference tools is more important, again, than simply knowing what that is. If you're teaching a grammar point and they understand the concept of masculine and feminine, being able to actually then find out how a word is masculine or feminine is far more important than whether they've just learned it in the first place. Your job as a primary school language teacher is to open their eyes to the opportunities provided by a language, to help them learn how to cope when they come across unfamiliar language, to help them develop strategies for learning new words, how they overcome hurdles and obstacles. So this is where you step in as a non-specialist. If you have a text and you're doing a reading comprehension and you don't understand every word, then you talk through that. You talk it through with them. It's like a talking walk through, that you're there going, well, okay, let's look at this. I see this word. I've seen this word before. It looks familiar to me. I think it means this. I don't know what this is, but let's have a look here. And you talk it through. You talk through the processes with them. And actually, you're thinking about the learning. And obviously, that's just a tiny sort of aspect of metacognition and applying those kind of aspects to the classroom. But the last thing I want you to do at this stage is get bogged down by pedagogy and theory and all of those sorts of things, because it's far more important that you just embed some quick practical strategies before you start worrying about those sorts of things. Yes, you need to offer opportunities to progress in a language, but progress can also be judged by how well they attempt a task, not just the raw score at the end. So, look at ways of how you're assessing how they approach the task. So, it could be a case that you have an assessment grid at the end where you actually judge how they felt they understood it. Were they able to understand more as they progressed through the task? Did they feel they could tackle it well? And that's far more meaningful than just a simple 7 out of 10. So, do bear in mind that working on skills is such an important way to go. You want to develop capable, resilient learners who are not afraid to make mistakes, who are not afraid to have a go, who are happy to join in, and they want to learn more about language and more about culture. So, to embed this, you can start every lesson with a skills-based starter and plenary. So rather than just always recapping new vocab, look at how you can practice skills. So it could be looking up some new words, finding some word classes. So group all the nouns here, group all the verbs, for example. Can you work out the determiners? Can you apply some grammar rules, for example? So starters and plenaries, that's a topic that I really want to talk about in more detail in the autumn term, or we look at that in a specific webinar, because obviously, I'm conscious that this is quite a general session today, but I want to look at those sorts of things in more detail, to look at really specific ideas that you can take into the classroom. And as well as that, languages is a great subject for cross-curricular links. You can begin to show them things, you can show them that the things they're learning have meaning beyond the classroom. And, you can build language learning into the timetable. So if you're doing number bonds, we'll do those numbers to 10 in French or Spanish. PE, if you've got various instructions, try to do some of those in French, for example. Classroom instructions, they don't always have to be used in your language lesson. Why not use those throughout the day as well? Tell them, right, today we're having a Spanish day or a French day, and in all of our days we're going to answer the register today. We're going to try and use these throughout it. So you're not teaching French or Spanish that day, but you are encouraging them to say please and thank you, and to use as much as they can. Counting, answering the register, as I've said. You could even change your phone or computer settings to the language being taught, so you can see it and use it all day long, so the children see that as well with you. And if you don't understand it, that doesn't matter either, because you can work it out together. Truthfully, I find that quite confusing. If I set my keyboard to French, I get quite confused by it, but it is a good way to think about, oh, hang on a minute, what do you think this is? Oh, it's insert or it's view on a Word document. And it also helps with their tech skills as well. So it's a win-win, across all those sorts of areas. There are loads of ideas, and I'm coming on to talk about celebrating culture as well, but making links and celebrating culture kind of go together, really, because the language is, you really want it to go beyond the classroom. So there's plenty that you can do, such as having a language learning wall or a language corridor in your school. Learning a new language in general is a great opportunity to find out about other countries and cultures. And the best thing of all is that European Day of Languages is on the 26th of September, which is a fantastic way to start the autumn term by celebrating languages. There are also great events such as the World Day for Cultural Diversity or International Mother Language Day, which Mother Language Day is in February, Cultural Diversity is in May, which are both ways to celebrate languages spoken. And it's fantastic because you've got a chance to celebrate all the cultures in your school. And that's your chance to start looking at it from Key Stage 1 as well, to have a whole school assembly, to have an event where children bring in a typical food item from a country, where they, bring in some facts or some information, promoting cultural diversity and celebrating all the different languages that are spoken by children in your school. If time permits, having a language club is a great way to start. And that can be a great way if you've got a member of staff who's not that confident. It can be a great thing to help them going. And if you've got a language club yourself, actually trying to start that can help you doing a little bit of speaking in not such a pressurized environment as well as in front of the class. You might have a small group and you can play a game with them and join in. And those are really nice ideas for ways to actually, just embed little bits of culture. So I actually live in Wales, and Welsh is compulsory to be taught in primary schools, and many teachers don't speak Welsh. And I see, this kind of thing, incidental Welsh will be encouraged in many different ways. And as well as having, a star of the week, many schools or whatever, it might be a learner of the week or, effort of the week or something, they would also have a Welsh star. So the person who has used the most amount of incidental Welsh. So celebrating somebody who's used the most amount of incidental French or Spanish throughout the week, somebody who's made a really good effort, because we want to celebrate the effort and the communication, not just somebody who's got everything right all the time. And the biggest thing that I want to say is to have fun with languages. Learning a language is fantastic, and it being frightening is not something that I want that to be for primary school teachers. I want it to be that they feel it's something they can do, because if they can do it, then their children can also do it. So a great thing to do is to watch cartoons with films. And one of the best cartoons that you can find is the Simpsons episode where Bart goes to France, and miraculously he's suddenly fluent by the end of the episode, and it comes with subtitles. It never fails to get a laugh, and we'll sort of say, well, if Bart Simpson can speak French, then so can you. It just goes to show. But you can watch cartoons and films with subtitles. That's a really easy thing to do. You can find little clips on YouTube, or read familiar books and stories, a familiar nursery rhyme in French or Spanish, for example, where they know the story, they know what's happening, so they're not surprised by it. You could find a recipe in the foreign language and cook something. So if you're doing cookery, why not actually do that? If you're doing as part of, a kind of skills effort where children are planning a trip, or they're planning a meal and they're looking at costings and budgeting and those sorts of things, then why not look at a French menu or a French shopping website and they're looking at the prices there? So look at the price in euros, so that they have to convert the money into pounds, so that they're just learning a little bit of culture around it as well. Have a French breakfast, have your children act as waiters, for example, or it doesn't have to be very expensive. It could just be that even pretend to do this and act this out. Epiphany, for example, after Christmas, is a fantastic event where it's a big event celebrated in France and Spain, and particularly you have a cake where there's a figurine found in it. And obviously you wouldn't want to do that in case somebody ate the figurine and choked on it, but it's a great thing to act out and kind of role play. And there are loads of different aspects of culture that you can do with this. So for example, when it's Day of the Dead in Mexico, look at making masks and acting out. That's a great idea. Somebody has just shared about Peppa Pig, for example, in French. There are all sorts of different things that children are familiar with, and you can usually find subtitles online as well. You know, why not a karaoke challenge and try and sing along with a language song? You know, take part in an exercise video, find a little exercise video or a meditation video and try to keep fit at the same time with your children, so that, you know, you join in with that. You know, find some songs. It doesn't matter what age you are. Language games and activities will encourage communication. We have a massive range of different board games and ideas like that that children can play, and they're familiar looking board games that they can kind of go away and play and work with, and those are great ideas to kind of look at, but just to make it that it's exciting. So, you know, the fact that the national curriculum is quite open should mean that you should be able to factor into your schemes of work fun as part of it. Yes, the timetable does pressure. Yes, you haven't got an awful lot of time to actually deliver it, but there's nothing to stop you from spending half an hour singing songs and doing that. And that's a fantastic way to embed the language, and it's going to be the lesson that children remember, and that's the bit. So even though you feel, oh my goodness, but I didn't teach them the 10 school subjects, that's okay. That can wait till another time. Get them enjoying it first. That's always more important. So, you know, I've got so many more tips that I could share, and I'm conscious that these are extremely general. As I've said, I wanted this to be a kind of general introduction to us and our team and how we're going to support you. So obviously from the autumn term, I want it to be that these sessions are going to be much more targeted and will offer, you know, really specific pieces of advice that you can take away and implement immediately. But in the medium term, I wanted to let you know we've got some CPD videos and resources to help you boost your subject confidence. Matt has shared some links for some of those. We've got a range of videos that we're starting to release, which is me chattering away about different aspects, because talking to teachers, you know, something that people are nervous about is things like masculine and feminine, singular and plural, pronouncing accents, you know, just key areas that may seem quite basic. And actually, if you look into, you know, you join a subject forum online, people tend to be experts already. So it's ensuring that we're not assuming you have that knowledge to begin with, that we are offering you that support. And if you have any suggestions for those, we're always open to those, and we're developing that range constantly. So we've got a few there as examples for you to have a look at, and we're adding to that range all the time, you know, with printable resources too. But they're things that you could look at in a departmental meeting. All of the videos are under 10 minutes. Most of them are 6 or 7 minutes. So it's really quick, bite-sized CPD that you could watch in a team meeting, quickly look at it, practice it, and implement it. So as well as our series of webinars, I'll also be looking at, as I've said, activities, games, starters, plenaries, all sorts of things in the webinars, but also in these short videos as well. We also have a resident blogger in our team. I believe Peter's here tonight, and he's our team blogger, and he shares his wealth of expertise. His latest blog that he's writing about is about cultural capital, which is all about how you embed culture in language lessons, and that's really, really useful. But he's also written blogs in other areas such as pronunciation and, you know, different aspects, assessment as well, retrieval practice, but we're adding to those constantly, and, you know, we link there to you with useful resources, and those blogs can be really, really great mini CPD sessions for you, because I'm conscious that CPD is not hugely available in the primary sphere, and certainly there isn't always time for it. And if you have questions, our Twitter and Facebook groups are run by me and my team, and we're there and we answer questions. It can be a really quick way if you're looking for some resources, if you're looking for some suggestions, or you've just got a query about something or how to use us, ask us, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. You know, those are really good ways to get in touch with us. We also offer, as part of, you know, our offering at Twinkl, we have progressive schemes of work. So if you're looking for something very structured, we have our Planet schemes, which run from year 3 to year 6, which are progressive, which have full sound file support, and which cover all of the national curriculum programs of study by the end of year 6, and, you know, will help you work through that. If you look for a more general approach, we've got resources on a wide range of topics and events to help you put together your own scheme. We've also got, as I mentioned about displays, an enormous displays and certificates, which are really marvelous. And coming soon, we've also got some grammar concept videos, which will be fantastic for explaining key grammar points to your children, because they'll work for homework, they'll work in the class situation, and they'll explain things that you may not be familiar with yourselves. We've got more CPD on key topics coming soon. As I've said, more webinars in the autumn term, and we're also developing new languages schemes with shorter lessons, because at the moment the planet lessons are around an hour, but we're conscious that most teachers don't have the luxury of an hour a week, so we're looking at shorter lessons that will have video embedded in it as well, so that will be really helpful too. So, you know, I'm conscious that it's been a bit of a whistle-stop tour, and there's been an awful lot of things that I've talked to you about, but really it was just a case of saying that there's a lot we feel that you can do without having to be an expert to help your children love languages. All you need is some enthusiasm and a commitment to actually develop the subject, and there's an awful lot you can do yourselves even if you're not an expert.